Hey, today I want to share some really interesting character motivation ideas. I think a lot of people forget about character motivations, but it literally runs the entire story. If your characters are not motivated to do anything, so we've all read that story where a character is a damsel in distress and she's like, ah, everything's happening to me, ah! She doesn't have any motivations for herself. It's a little frustrating to read because the characters have no agency, basically. And adding motivations to them, something they want, something they're desperate to have, makes them so much more interesting too. And the good thing is that whenever there's a lapse in your story where nothing's happening and you don't know what to write about again, you can use their motivation and you can allow them to gain some leeway in there and to do something random related to their motivation. And making sure that every character has a motivation is super helpful too, when it's the main character, because the side characters feel like carbon copies if you've ever read a story like that. But I'm going to share with you a few fun ideas for motivations they could have. First one, boredom. Let's say a character is super bored all the time. Coronavirus, I'm sure you've been there, where there's just nothing to do, there's no outside stimulation, so they could get so bored they could do crazy things. Maybe they contact a really sketchy phone number to buy a secret artifact because they're bored. And they could make risky decisions because they're bored. This character, let's say you're at a point where nothing's happening in your story, they could get bored too, and they could run off and do something crazy, and then other people have to get them out of whatever situation. So that's an idea. Another idea is money. So some people are obsessed with money. This is useful, maybe a workaholic or someone who's in an abusive situation. Try and get some money. Next idea is to get someone to trust them or to figure out if they can trust someone. So this is the girl who tries to send her friend to see if the boyfriend will cheat. And to determine if he's loyal. This is also someone who wants to spy on a partner's text to see if they can trust them. So if the story is lapsed and nothing's happening, they could be testing their partner, not necessarily the partner, it could also be a friend. Maybe they have an ally and they really don't trust them, but they want to know if they can, or they want them to trust them. That's an idea. Next one is to be polite. This one is normal, but it could be really funny. So let's say you have a character who's kind of a people pleaser, guilty, but they're obsessed with being polite no matter what. You put them in a really weird situation where they're trying to be, but I know famous serial killers would, if you know which one I'm thinking of, DM me, because I don't remember who this is, but the name's on the tip of my tongue. Really famous evil serial killer. I think it's Ted Bundy. But he would pretend to have a leg that's not working, or he would pretend to be carrying a bunch of things and need help, and he'd do it around pretty women, maybe in the parking lot, and they would be polite and try to help him, and then he would drag them in his car, and there wasn't a car door opener. He had no side handle, so they couldn't get out, and then you know how that goes. So that's an idea of a motivation where it doesn't have to be that crazy, but maybe someone's being polite and gets led away into a really crazy situation in a new environment. If you're writing a fantasy or supernatural story, this could get really crazy really quick. Maybe you're writing a historical they accidentally say yes to something crazy. So that's an idea. The next one is to prove they're right. This one, kind of funny. So let's say they just need to be right no matter what. This one leads to a lot of really interesting revenge plots or interesting ways they try to prove themselves, and it can really be interesting in a story. For example, the arrogant character might be the one to step up for something crazy just to prove that they were right about something, and if they never back down, it can get really interesting. Next one is to prove that they're useful. So let's say someone's indoctrinated by a cult and they want to be useful no matter what. Maybe this is their only motivation. They're a little bit of a zombie, but it can be really interesting because if their only desire is to be useful to someone else, it's still a desire, it's still a motivation. And this is a little more in-depth than someone just being a robot, because there are things to unpack here, and there's also a way to tap into that motivation to be useful. Maybe you're the second hand person and you say, oh yeah, the leader wanted you to do XYZ, but it's not true, but they want to be useful, so then they go off and do something you want instead because you've got in the middle of the motivation. So just an idea. Next one is to potentially just try and run away from everything. So if we've ever seen someone with avoidant attachment, they might just shut off and not want to deal with anything. That's an idea. A next one is to be strange. So if you've ever seen the weird side of TikTok, or maybe you've seen alt fashion or really interesting characters who are just trying to be strange on purpose and to do things that no one else would want to do just for the purposes of characterizing themselves as quirky or unusual. That's an idea of something. Next one is to protect someone. So let's say you have a mom who's going to protect the baby at all costs. Let's say a girl is just going to really take care of her dog no matter what. You could have best friends who feel that way about each other. Really interesting. Next one is someone who needs to be a victim no matter what. So let's say someone has a sob story, and then if nothing's happening, they just find a way to make an ordinary situation seem like they're in some kind of evil plot. And this can be really interesting because their need to be a victim can rally people against others who may not necessarily be perpetuating something. So maybe this is the teenage daughter who says, oh my gosh, my mom is killing me, and it's not real and it's an exaggeration, but everyone's like, oh my gosh, we are going to call social services, and that leads somewhere, which is kind of crazy, but that's an idea. So think about that and think about motivations like that, and it can be really useful and really fun when you're developing characters. Have fun.